Welcome to the Leela Life Show. I'm your host, Linda Andrews, and you've tuned in to the right place to up-level in your life and business. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Leela Life Show. I'm your host, Linda Andrews, and today I am bringing Tracy Litt to the show. Welcome back, Tracy. So good to see you again.
Thank you for having me. I love hanging out.
Thanks for being here. Tracy is the founder of the Litt Factor, creator of Mind Magic, which is the proven methodology marrying metacognition, spirituality, neuroscience, quantum law all together. And she's a mindset coach, spiritual advisor, rapid transformational hypnotherapist, best-selling author, and just an amazing human being, which obviously you can tell. So thanks for coming back, Tracy. There's so much I feel like right now that people can use some extra support in the world. And I really hope that this episode can be a powerful anchor for them. So I would love to start by just hearing how you've been, what you're seeing, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I agree. So I've been good. I've been COVIDed. So I just went through that experience for myself. And it was yet another profound lesson in the work. It was another profound gift in what are we all rushing for? What is this fictitious, self-inflicted, constant sense of urgency really about? So let's take that as the first nugget.
Yeah.
And I always work the work, right? Whatever work I get to teach or coach or mentor my clients is only work that I've done on myself or I currently still do on myself. So I was, practicing my breathing, really allowing myself to be in the unknown, was super resting, pushed back launches, canceled clients, felt no guilt, felt no concern about it, because that's what happens when you really work the work, right? And you trust. But it really was just another beautiful reminder, which I believe the current state of the world is gifting all of us. And it's still here because so many of us aren't paying attention yet. What's really important? What is your rushing about? How can you slow down and recognize that that is a gift and it's a key element to everything else you want to access in your life, internally and externally? And how can you take a look at what this outside circumstance is gifting you and magnifying for you so that you can make more soul-aligned choices than you have been up until now?
So beautiful. And it feels like this opportunity, like you said, in the pause to really dive into that work. But I'm curious, for someone that may feel really triggered by what you just even said, or like, F you, this is COVID, this is serious, this is all the things, the stories, and maybe not able to access the work at all. Like, where is it by just noticing, like, oh, I'm rushing? Is it, where does this even start? Because I feel what you said about, collectively, we're not getting it yet. I mean, it's evident, right?
Yeah.
And I've been having this experience lately where I feel like, let's take soil for an example. I look at soil and I'm like, man, like, I really want our soil to be so rich and juicy and prosperous for everyone. Water. I want our water to be so pure, so nourishing, so clean. And then I have this fear that's like, but it's not. There's these things in it, there's pesticides, there's which can feel like a fact on a lot of levels. And there's this disconnect between the rich, prosperous, juicy soil, pure water that I feel and see in my mind, and then the reality. And then in this gap feels like this dismay of like, when are we going to get there? Are we all dying? The soil, oh my God. And it's sort of maybe a silly, but I think very relevant example that could also be parallel to what we're going through, where it's like, can we get through this? Can we define health in a different way? Can we, all the things, but then we're in this. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, for you and what you're seeing working to get I guess into the belief is my question. Like, even how do you even get into the belief that soil can be rich and pure, when you're just like, fuck, there's no nutrients anymore, like the pesticides
Mm-hmm.
suck.
Right. Well, you can't, because you're saying you want one thing, but your focus and attention is on something else.
Mm,
Right. So that's really important. And I think like the overarching piece also is it's not ever going to happen in one fell swoop where all of a sudden collectively our consciousness raises in one shot because everybody has finally been ready to see what they need to see or learn their lessons or wake up. It can't be an all or nothing. And we can't be waiting for that, because that's not how real evolution takes place. It's not how change really occurs. It's each individual's readiness. And that's beautifully okay,
mm,
because we're making progress. We're making progress, right? I mean, really, look at what you and I do for a living. You can't even call it work if you tried. Neither can I, right? We're helping people in their consciousness and accessing their holistic success and wellness, and, really understanding the depth and the breadth of their personal power. We're shifting the paradigm of I need to see it in order to believe it into a whole different world of I need to believe it first in order to see it. So if you are ready, you will take note and start to wake up and start to ask yourself the hard, yucky, want to vomit kind of uncomfortable questions, and make new choices, and start to let go of how many people you're going to upset and the responsibility you currently take for everybody's emotions and all of those other kind of things that go on, until you go, wait a minute, that's not serving me. And I have so much growth as a spiritual being having a human experience to access. And I'm going to use this circumstance as a catalyst to wake up.
mm.
Right. So it's one person at a time. It's not like, okay, the masses, here we go. Let's do it. Not a thing. Just not a thing.
Literally one snap.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you ever find in that, in that not waking up in one fall swoop frustration? Like, how do you, as a spiritual teacher and leader, handle that when you're vibing in X space and you may be witnessing Y space? And I guess that's a nice time to say about even interpersonal dynamics. You don't need to get it personal, or you can. But we see things, and we see
Mhm.
things that are maybe not in like the perfect high vibing that maybe you or I would want to maintain a lane. So I'll leave it at that.
Hmm. Uh, if one is truly,
Mhm.
truly conscious, then there is no world where they would be, me, you, anyone, in judgment of someone who isn't at that level of consciousness yet. It's just a non-starter. So check in with yourself. If you're listening and you are a coach, a healer, a spiritual guide, an advisor, and you're sitting and you are nothing but activated and judgmental about the people that are not, I need you to check in on your own work in the world, because that's not alignment, right? When I witness that, and I do, even in my marriage, there's a Facebook Live that my husband and I did on the Live Factor page that spoke to this, because let's just call, I woke to my consciousness way before he did, right? And I'm speaking with such clarity because it wasn't always this way. The first few months I was righteous and bitchy and, what do you mean? Why don't you just make a new choice? Why don't you just feel lighter? Why don't you just like, don't you know? Why don't you, like, and then I was like, whoa, Trey. So I can speak with such ease and conviction about it because I made glorious mistakes on it. And it's just a no. So I've experienced it in my home. I observe, right? You just notice, and it's okay. It's a mutual, like, it doesn't activate me. It doesn't upset me. I have no judgment over it, because to be operating from a higher consciousness inherently means that you are operating free of self-judgment, which means free of judgment of others, because self-judgment, judgment of others comes from your own self-judgment. So you are more enlightened and you are more compassionate and understanding of the principle that each person's journey is just as unique and valid as yours. Full stop. No matter where they are, where they aren't, whether they're awake, whether they're asleep, how they're acting, what they're choosing. It just, it's not something that becomes a negative or an agitation, because each person is unique to them.
I think that's a nice segue to what I'll call the good and bad consciousness that we witness and maybe is deeply programmed. Well, that's bad, right? So I'm observing someone's behavior. It does feel like a judgment, right? That's bad. I'm judging that someone's bad. And but that's coming from such a deep imprinting of my whole life, right? And then I have this now judgment, and I feel like this is happening a lot right now. And what I heard you just say is like a lot of softening, like it's okay. So where does good and bad, and it's easy to bring in religion. I think when we talk about good and bad, I think that's where a lot of the programming comes in, but we see it in schooling, we see it in so many places. And so coming to terms with the good, bad, within maybe each person within our own self, to then show up differently in the world with less of the good,
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. So here's the first thing I want to pull out of what you just said. Just because we see it in our world doesn't make it okay, healthy, or normal.
Mm.
And you need to sit with that,
Mm-hmm.
because that's one of the biggest paradigms that we're breaking down.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
God bless every single beautiful generation that raised us, but they didn't know what we know. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do for a living. This wasn't available in our parents' generation, not even a possibility in our grandparents' generation, right? So to start questioning and to start realizing, well, just listen, I mean, and nothing needs a bigger overhaul than our academic system.
Mm.
So to use that as a measurement of what's accurate is ridiculous. So ultimately there really is no good or bad. That is a judgment. There's no right or wrong. What there is aligned or not aligned. What there is empowered or disempowered. And when you get to, and that's like such a simple shift, like for everybody who's hanging with us right now, like you just take that with you. Like, cause I love to always, as you know, like talk about, okay, so how do we do some of these things? Like, so what do I do? So if I'm going to stop judging as right or wrong, which, side note, breaks your connection to yourself. Because why is indecision so pervasive? Because we've been raised to think, well, I might make the wrong decision. And if I make the wrong decision, then I'll make no decision. So then I'll just be paralyzed. And now I'm further and further away from trusting myself and from being connected to my truth and my intuition, right? So it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So if we take away right and wrong, then it's so much easier to start to kind of go within, to start to remove the depths of the self-judgment and just simply say, like, is this aligned or not aligned? Which really translates to, does this feel good in my body or does it not? Which is such a different energy than the judgment of good or bad.
So much different. Wow. Yeah. And I think people have an opportunity to really, it's funny because the good or bad, it's that judging usually outward, like that's good or bad. When you say disempowering or empowering, immediately you're asking, like, how does that feel in my body? And that's right. I have to go from outside judging everything as good or bad to inside checking in, where's this, how is this in my body, empowered, disempowered, which feels like embodiment. How do you teach embodiment, some practical tools that if one is just digesting this stuff for the first time, which is the second time if you've been listening to all the episodes, but where embodiment practices, this is something I'm really seeing a ton of, is the opportunity for embodiment practices, me and myself as myself, maybe even full of myself, because that's who I need to be full of, And so, yeah. And I would also like to segue from that embodiment practices and why one can't access them or why they think they can't.
So let's go backwards.
Mhm.
We can't access it, or we think we can't, because another thing that we're working through in our healing, growth, and expansion, right, the consciousness revolution, is remembering that we have bodies, which sounds ridiculous. But when I work with these gorgeous visionary women leaders like you, it is most common that they've been so highly analytical, so highly judgmental, so high achieving, so logical that they literally forget that their body's attached to their head, right? It's been all head. So when we to even talk about embodiment feels like, what is this, Mandarin? Like, what is she saying? Because you have to be connected to your body to understand what's happening in your emotional being, right? Who are you being? What are you embodying? How are you showing up, right? To embody something is to bring it to life. It's to become it. It's to show up as it, right? If I had to give you like simplest form of it, and you have to know, you get to reconnect with your body, because your body is your best communicator. Like, it makes me emotional. Your body is like the yummiest, juiciest place. Everything starts and stops with your body. Your traumas in your body. Your ability to do profound mindset work actually starts in the body, not the mind. What? Sounds crazy, right? The way your intuition communicates with you. How do you know the distinction between fear and intuition? If it's fear, your mind's running it. If it's intuition, your body is speaking it, right? It's like your body tells all. So a reconnection to the body has to come into play to start any really rooted embodiment practice. Does that feel
Yeah,
clear?
that feels very clear.
Okay. And then embodiment is the way, like, let me even try to break it down even simpler. Like, who are you embodying? What are you embodying? What are you subscribing to? Who are you being? And I teach it to the lens of specifically embodying the version of you that you are becoming. Embodying the version of you who slows down. Embodying means, like, in actual fact, behavior, doing it, not thinking about it, not hoping, not wishing, not praying. That is not embodiment, right? And embodying the version of you now, presenting as being the version of you that is connected to herself, that slows down, that meditates, that trusts her intuition, that plays a far bigger game, that leans into risk, that uses her voice, right? You can start to identify, like, whoa, and then embodying that means being it now, bringing it to life now.
Not in tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
not in an hour. And
Yep.
it's, as you were saying that, what was really coming through is about how sometimes in spirituality there can be, um, take like visioning, which I
Mm-hmm.
know there's a way to do vision that connects to the now, but it can, there, some of these practices can take you really outside of now and being. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think that for somebody that may be feeling really ungrounded, it's like, I'm doing all these things, but some of these things could even equal more confusion if they're not rooted in this simple principle of embodiment,
Mm-hmm.
and the now, and the making the new choice now. And so I'm curious, how do you make these tools of the vision piece, as you're saying, what would she do? Who
Mm-hmm.
would they be?
Right.
Really rooted in presence, where on some level the vision isn't now, but then I think that's quantum, is it is now. It's all
It is
now.
now. And that's the fun fact. And that's also why I love what I get to do in the world, because my mind works very simply. So when I study, and I study all the time, and I look at these enigmatic, highly complex, like, I will sit with a book and read each page truly probably 4 times. I'll sit with it, read it. I do this in my sauna, actually, and then I read it out loud, like I'm teaching a class. And then I read it again, and then I read it again until I'm like, okay, how do I like use the law of association, which for your brain is like the law of something that already makes sense to you, like something you already associate with, right? Like how I teach belief work that you've experienced, right? I liken it to an elephant so you can understand the bigness of the subconscious mind. So being able to take it and give it to you in a way that's like, oh, that totally makes sense. Like that doesn't feel so crazy, right? Because if we can make all of these profound, totally truth-based principles, so it's all super real.
Mhm.
If we can make it more sensible and easier to digest, then your mind body goes, oh, that's doable. And then you do the practical application, which is the requirement to have the evidence that one needs to form the belief of the possibility of the work that then in turn makes you want to do more of the work, right? It's like if you decide, I'm going to try intermittent fasting for a week, and then you feel like your pants are a little bit looser at the end of the week and your mental clarity is there, you are going to automatically do more intermittent fasting because you have the evidence of the practice, and that's how we operate,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I just went on that tangent and now I forget your original question. Hold on.
Well,
It was
yep.
something good. Oh, about you were saying about the fields and visioning. So that is the fun part. Everything is already available. All the wishes we have are already fulfilled. When we say everything you want wants you, it does. And it's like right there available. And it's your embodiment and your states of being really that allow you to create a higher energetic resonance and a higher vibration so that you're like pulling the potentials out of the field into the now. And I will say, after now teaching thousands of women different spectrums of this work, the hardest part for us is the part that needs the evidence now in our physical reality, right? So we vision and we do the thing, and we're like, yes, and we're like looking out, and that's our future, and we're using our imagination, and we're connecting to the emotion, and we have a intention, and we have all these gorgeous things going on, and that's Monday. And then Monday night, you like look into your current reality, and you're like, well, where is it? And as soon as you look into the current reality, you're breaking that new kind of pull and the resonance in your field that's going to pull that through. So if we can learn, which is very doable, everything's a practice, all of it. Every piece of inner work is all practice based, just like yoga, right? Which again is like law of association. When I liken something to physical workouts, it makes so much more sense to your brain because it's so much more accepted by the masses, right?
There's no like, oh.
Right. It's just like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like you go to the gym, it's a practice. You don't go to the gym for a week and then call me and go, where are my 6-pack abs? Right? You're not
Right.
looking at your abs going, where's my evidence? I've been at the gym for a week. But we do that when it comes to healing, growth, expansion, manifestation, generation, all of that stuff, because really that's our skepticism wanting to get in the way. Right?
Yeah.
So I'll stop there because I could rant for
No,
days.
it's important, and this feels like a nice segue as we're talking about the quantum to talk about 5D and 3D. I know for some people this may be a newer concept, or even just like, what the heck are you talking about? And for me, it's fun to I have fun getting real fringe. I do. I love to like get super fringe. I love to just
Okay.
see, like last year I was like, I want to try to really understand flat earth, and I gave it a real go, and I like still don't fully get it, and I'm like, maybe I'm closer, I don't know. That was cool, and I'm like, this has got to connect to the quantum somehow. Like I just still need this to simmer. And I think 5D is one of these things that, especially over the past couple of years, started coming in more and more. And it's like, we're in an ascension path, we're
Yeah,
ascending. And I
we are.
think this brings up a lot of different things for different people, including like what the word ascension even means. And you may not even have the word ascension in your framework for 5D, but I'd love to hear what these terms bring up for you and how you make sense of them.
Totally. So I in my framework, I use the word expansion in the same way that you use the word ascension, right? So where do I want to start with this?
And just
So
say, side note,
ascension.
like I was not knocking flat earthers. It just to explain one example of one thing to some people think are fringe, other
Mhm.
people don't, and just be in the curious exploration of, what of this is resonating with me?
1,000%. And I think what you just said is actually a really important thing to just kind of like sit on for a minute. The curiosity is essential. Meaning, if you're listening to this conversation and you're not willing to be curious, you will not hear any of this. So just pay attention to that. Even notice and do it with grace. Not now you can beat yourself up for realizing you were judging. Just give yourself grace and go, okay, wait a minute. Like, how do I see this through an experimenter's mind? How can I hear this conversation through, like, you know what if, right? And really open yourself up. And it's self-protection that blocks us from opening up. It's skepticism, which is fear in disguise. It's all of these low-level things that are choices. So hear us through, that's interesting. It opens you up. So what ascension means from my teaching and spiritual advisement perspective is helping yourself move from and I'll explain this, the 3D through the 4D into the 5D as much as you can. That's important. It's not like I live in 5D 24/7 365. It's not a thing. That's not a thing. And if you are somewhere where you believe it's a thing, it's going to be counterproductive because 5D is not a place. 5D is a state of being. It's really important. You don't go to 5D, you don't get to 5D. It's not a location. Right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. 3D is tangible. It's our humanness. It's matter, like this is a coffee mug, right? It's tangible matter, humanness. It's, I'm going to give you guys some states of being. It's where fear lives. It's control. It's attachment. It's judgment. It's scarcity. It's victimhood. Those are some of the, if you want to like be like, oh, okay, that's 3D, right? Which D stands for dimension. So ascension is through the dimensions. 4D is when you're transmuting, healing, growing, you're in the work, you're stepping up, like, whoa. There's so much more to myself. There's all these different states of being. There's all these different emotional ways. Wow, I am energy. Now you're in that's acceptance. 4D is like, yeah, I'm the problem and I'm the solution. Yeah, I'm energy. What the hell do I do with all of this information now? What do I do, right? And you're like, you're integrating, you're acclimating, right? And you're absolutely ascending. You're expanding. It's happening. And 5D is when you are in that highest states of being where you know and believe that you have to believe it to see it. You are, your vibration is high, right? When we talk about like high vibe, which really gets like this bad rap now because it got filtered through so much stuff, you know? It's things like trust and love and knowing and operating through the emotional state and lens of all of your desires having already been fulfilled. It's abundance, it's ease, it's wholeness. Whereas 3D is like you're still playing the not enough game, just to give you like a quick comparison. It's detachment, it's playfulness. And when you're in those states of being, your resonance is so high, that's where high vibe comes from, high vibrational frequency, that what you see, like how your brain works changes because what you see and what you focus on is dramatically different. And your energetic resonance is such that it is now a match for potentials that weren't available to you when you were down here in the low level states of being. I'll pause.
And would that be then the 5D, the non-place, the frequency
Yes.
of where, what would she do? Like that's where she's hanging out.
1,000%. Because 5D is quantum and quantum is 5D.
Mm-hmm.
Those in my world of understanding and teaching, those are
Mm-hmm.
interchangeable because the quantum is a field, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quantum physics is the study of the smallest possible particle, right? So it's also this understanding that everything is interconnected at all times, and what you are receiving and experiencing is a direct match for where you are vibrationally, which ultimately translates to where you are emotionally. And that's what makes it make sense. You're like, oh shit. So if I'm waking up every day and I'm feeling worryful and overwhelmed and insecure and pressurized and stressed out, that is what you are, that is what your resonance is pulling towards you, right? Whereas when you are much higher than that in all the other beautiful states of being we just mentioned, you didn't have to change time, you didn't have to change space, you didn't have to do anything but pay attention to your inner environment, and then everything in your outer environment changes.
And it changes in a way that it at a minimum is your perception of it changing. At a maximum, it's all changing. Literally
Yeah,
all
well,
of it's
but
changing.
perception is reality.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it all actually changes because you changed. But it's not about, and this I think is the biggest part of like starting to understand this, it's not a place. None of this is, it's not a place, it's not a location, you're not going anywhere.
You don't need to get anywhere.
Right, right. The only place you need to go actually is within yourself, right? To spend time, more time in your imagination, more time in the emotional position of all of your desires being done, right? Like in, hold on, this is a great book for everybody, but let me just think. In The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, he speaks to it with the phrase, living as if your wishes are fulfilled. That's his language. Your wishes fulfilled. So even if you pause right now and played with us and was like, okay, so what are one of my wishes? I want to be in like the romantic relationship of my life. Let's just say that's it, right? And you ask yourself, well, and you got to close your eyes. How does it feel? How do I feel when that wish is fulfilled? Your smile is going to come on your face. It's not conscious. You're smiling. You're like, I feel fucking loved. I feel sexy. I feel amazing. I feel adored. I feel powerful. I feel confident. I feel happy. I feel joyful. And then the practice is live there now. Stop then going, there's no good men or women available to me. Stop looking down, right, at your current reality and stay in that emotional state. And that loving partner will magnetize to you in a way that you least expect and in a much shorter timeline than you would have anticipated.
Including in that example, perhaps your existing partner, if you have one, showing up a lot differently without, right? I think there's this temptation, and maybe in a more therapeutic model, to have the conversation, have the talk, right? I hear this a lot. We got to have a talk. And there can be great things that come from talks. And if that integrity to the inner state is not there, the talk may exacerbate things, not reorient you in the way that you want to.
Yes, and I think it's interesting because each scenario would be very specific to whomever these two partners are, right?
Mm-hmm.
To support your point, which is very important, it's amazing how your relationship can change simply by you working on yourself. I have had, there's one woman I'm thinking of right now. She came into Mind Magic because she wanted to ready herself for her divorce that she was get ready to tell her partner was coming. She left Mind Magic in the same partnership being the most romantic, satisfying relationship of her life. And she still messages me 2 years later and she's like, I cannot even believe I was about to divorce him. And he did nothing different. She, to your point, she changed her perception. She changed her unhappiness with herself. She worked on her own lovability and her relationship with herself. She learned how to receive love. She learned how to open her mouth and ask for what she wants, because conversation is important. If we're not communicating in our relationships, like it's really essential. But to your point, it's amazing because when you do the work of yourself, everything around you is forced to get entrained to your energy. It's forced to change with how you're different, how you're showing up, what you're available for, how your energy is being emitted. And neuroscientifically, you always see what you look for. So if you're in this story about how your partner sucks and you never have sex and they're so terrible and all of these things, now let me just also say sidebar. If you are in a situation where you are being verbally abused, mentally abused, sexually abused, get help, get out. Don't try to work on your inner self. That I just need to say that because it's a slippery slope if you are in that position. And I want to acknowledge it. If that's not the case, it's amazing what happens when you work on you first, because you start to see your partner differently. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm so amorous towards them. I'm so excited. I want to touch them, right? Because you're focusing on what's great about them instead of what's annoying you.
That feels like a good opportunity to unpack personal responsibility for a little bit. There's two things that I feel like are timeless out of many things, but one of them being personal responsibility, and the other is you say dancing with fear. So the fear conversation. But if we could start with personal responsibility and just, I would say, starting it from the perspective of why this is so important. And as you're talking, it's like the you go first. I really try to embody that mantra as often as I can. I go first. So whatever it is I want to see different, I go first. I go first. I go first. I go first. And that for me feels like radical personal responsibility. And this is something you're an expert in teaching as a real basic first step, or not so basic. I mean, when you're used to being in a victim mindset and not owning your responsibility, this can be something I think that very easily and quickly can slip away. But
Yeah.
what are you seeing right now in terms of personal responsibility, people stepping into it and through it? Like, it feels like a portal for personal
Oh, it absolutely is
responsibility.
a portable. It absolutely is, because it takes you out of victimhood into power.
Uh-huh.
So it's like it's a leap right in and of itself, unquestionably. And what's so interesting is radical personal responsibility is both a first step and a constant step. It's right. So it's a first step and it's a constant practice. Let's say that, right? So it is a first step to really starting to awaken for yourself, being able to honor and believe in your inherent worthiness first, because the only way to take the depth of ownership that one needs to is to be willing to not play the I'm not enough game anymore and really realize I am worthy, I am enough. Nothing can interfere, influence my worth. Therefore, I can put my hand up and take radical personal responsibility for where I am in my life, knowing that I am the co-creator of the experiences that I am having, and that I am the cause of whatever effect I'm experiencing, and getting that oftentimes nauseatingly honest with yourself, right? Because then you're being really honest, because it's amazing how many lies we believe from ourselves to ourselves. We're phenomenal at it. Right? So that's the first piece of it. And then this ongoing check-in. And I love what you say, I go first. What a gorgeous anchor to that, right? Always checking in on what is happening within me that's creating this experience right now. Like, I have 3 teenage daughters. If I'm experiencing something with one of my daughters, it is so easy and so societally acceptable for me to say, for me to externally reason or blame, well, she's being a bitchy 17-year-old. That's why. And everyone around me would be like, oh, yeah, and they'd commiserate, which is a problem.
Mhm.
But in actual fact, I go, wait a second, Trace, what's your ownership here? Right? And I go within myself, then I recognize, wow, you were being really highly controlling. You said something that made her feel like you weren't trusting her, right? What is your role in what you're experiencing right now? And that's an example of how RPR is an ongoing practice.
Beautiful example. There's it feels like, especially on social media sometimes, where I don't know, I just feel like the energy can feel so projecty. It's like da 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 da, and I'm always like, man, if we could just have all that energy like alchemized and convert into personal responsibility. And that's a great example of like, I'm seeing this where I just like to use it as internal opportunities,
Absolutely. And that's
may not.
everything. Everything's an internal opportunity. And I will offer this as a way for everyone to experience all of the interesting things that are happening online today, is a real compassion and perspective of, isn't it interesting to watch everyone's opposing belief structures at play? That's all it is. All of the, stuff going on social media, as you say, all the things that you can observe, don't judge it, don't jump into it, but to really stay kind of higher and not have it impact you, and to really have a cleaner perspective, is to really realize that there are humans behind every comment, every interaction. And what we're really seeing is opposing beliefs, power struggling, opposing beliefs, standing firmly in what they believe, opposing beliefs, feeling threatened, feeling activated, nothing more, nothing less. And that is what makes the world go around. Different belief structures, different perspectives, different upbringings. That is the world in which we live. No good, no bad, no right, no wrong, no up, no down. That's it.
That the social media as it relates to fear feels like a really important piece to unpack here. And in my perspective, we have these tools that could be, say, industrial grade tools that may not be uh, made with your cozy cup of coffee and well-being in mind. And
Mm-hmm.
so I frame that from my perspective, and maybe in any perspective, that there can be a lot of fear that is there, and then
Mm-hmm.
beyond social media, the media, um,
Mm-hmm.
it may be like at its loudest ever.
Yeah.
And so there's Linda, let's say, or let's make up a name. There's Joe, and she is, I have to edit this. I'm sorry. I
That's
just
okay.
said my sister-in-law.
Go
I'm
ahead.
not going to do that. Okay. So let me reframe there. It kind of caught me.
It's okay.
Fear. Okay. Uh, okay. So there's fear that I'm experiencing internally.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's fear that I can be witnessing externally. And there can be points of time where this feels quite the overwhelm soup. And so then there's my internal fear that I'm navigating, using, say, some of your tools. What would
Mm-hmm.
she do? Getting into 5D mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
then I go look around and then I read clickbait A, clickbait B, report A, report B, very real things. And
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
this experience that we're in, where fear feels to be in the abundance that I would love to see all prosperity be in. What do you think?
Mm.
What needs to be said about fear right now?
To first understand that we live in a fear-based consciousness collectively. There's there's actually a very small percentage of beings that aren't fear-based. And it doesn't make anyone wrong or right. That's not a judgmental statement. That is a fact-based statement based on where we are consciousness in the masses of who we are, right? The fact that the world does approach us from how can we control billions of people at once, right? And it's almost like the intention is good, the approach is really skewed and irresponsible, right? So to really know that, so that you can start to question things for yourself, to know that there are many, many, many ways to navigate things that feel good to you, to be able to think and start to align for yourself and not simply blindly follow anything or anyone on any topic at any time ever. And I say that specifically because I'm not having a COVID conversation right now. I am talking about all of it all the time. Be a free,
Period.
yes, be a free thinker. Draw your own conclusions. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. That feels this invitation to free thinking as it relates to an experience of fear. I'm in a fear state, a constant fear state because of X, Y, or Z. And then I have the opportunity to get curious and just start. It's like the inner architecting, interplaying with myself, looking at and starting to see the world differently. And I'm not claiming to be one of the fear-free people yet, but I am getting these really powerful glimpses. And I'm like, oh, wow. And then I can get really hooked by the fear, and then, it kind of starts over again. But the
Totally.
glimpses, it's like, whoa, this is amazing. And it really it's like, it is an illusion.
Yeah, it is. And it's not about being fear-free, right? Because fear is biological, and everyone please go listen to my TED talk about it. But it's more so just by really like, what part of this is my emotional addiction to fear? How does me subscribing to this clickbait or sitting in front of the television for hours on end drive my anxiety? Like really start to wake up to how much power you have and how much choice you have and how much agency you have, and start to think for yourself.
So good. Thank you. I would love to give you an opportunity if there's any practices or final thoughts that you would love to have every single listener start doing as soon as this episode wraps, or really integrating. What would that be?
Oh, that would be start to spend more time nourishing your nervous system. That means feet in the grass outside. It means breathing intentionally throughout your day. It means shaking your body out. It means movement. It means recognizing when you're jacked up and doing something to love your nervous system and calm it down. That is the biggest gift one can give to themselves right now, unquestionably.
So much. I know you always have so much goodness. We have whatwouldSheDo.net, which is your masterclass that's on demand. If you want to speak about that for a moment, we'll have that in the show notes.
Yay. Yeah. So, what would she do? It's a three-part audio class where you understand what it means to need to change to generate something different, right? We have to become different to gain something different. We then take you through a gorgeous visualization, spending time with the next level, higher version of you. And there's also a worksheet where you really kind of drill down, as we were talking about before. Who is she? How does she walk? How does she talk? What is she available for? What's her energy? So you get really closely connected. And then the third part is, how do you leverage what would she do for sustainable change and quantum creation in your life?
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's always an honor to be with you. And I thank you personally for your work. It's been a transformational impact in my life. It continues to be. And I know, multiply me out, you're making some ripple effects. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next week on the Leela Life Show.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Leela Life Show. Be sure to share, like, and comment. Tune in next week. And if you're not already a member of the Leela Life Collective, you'll want to be. So take a look in the show notes and be sure you sign up today. Have a beautiful day.